So the whole time that Louisa was presenting, Sagittarius was rising. Different energy, right? Literally the background frequency, if we want to use that term, was supporting enthusiasm and fire, inspiration. About 10 minutes ago, it moved into Capricorn. So the energy has shifted. The energy shifts every 2 hours, every day. Right? We go through this wheel. And so we can see the sun is high in the sky here. We're a day away from a new moon. We're a day away from another eclipse at the 29th degree of Virgo. Right? We had the first one at the very first 0 degrees. We had a very powerful lunar eclipse in the middle of this month. Now we're closing out this with the 29th degree. So what you've been doing for the last month, these 2 days, is actually being sort of constituted, if you will. So it's just a beautiful, I always like to orient to the sky now, right? And so this is my personal sort of orientation.
Sorry, can you speak louder?
I can try. Yes. My 12th gate of caution is not, but I will try to project. Thank you. So now many of you would probably be more familiar with this orientation, correct? Right? This is the same sky now, but this is looking at it through human design. We get a similar map. Of course, it looks a little differently. One of the things that human design doesn't do is doesn't have a rising sign. There's no ascendant. And when I came to human design, that drove me fucking bonkers. I'm like, how can you not have an ascendant, right? But, I got over that. And essentially what human design doing is doing something called the 0 Aries chart. So if I were to change my settings here and show you something called 0 Aries, well, then it's going to look a little more familiar. Aries will always be here at the 9 o'clock position. And now we see, we've got Saturn and Neptune here. Over on this side of the chart, we can see the sun moving into 28 degrees, and that's an exact mapping of this. Essentially, human design is a 0 Aries chart. It doesn't move. It doesn't really show us where we are on the planet at any given time. That's something that using both systems, I would encourage. I know a lot of folks aren't familiar with astrology, but I'm a big proponent of integrating both of these systems. I think all of these systems need to be integrated. This is a system of integration, right? This is a Ravi Ching with an astrology wheel, with a body graph, right? I mean, this is all about integration. And I think the more you bring an understanding of each of those components, I think more insight and more useful this tool becomes, right? If you think what Orion brings through his understanding of the hexagrams and studying Tai Chi and Qigong, right? That's deeply foundational. I think this is such a part of this system, right? I think astrology equally is a part of it. So part of my mission is to, sort of promote that integration, if you will. So this is where we are now. And what's interesting is that everyone in this room is an emotional generator right now. No matter what your type is, right? You're a reflector, you're a projector, you're a manifester. But right now we get to participate collectively as emotional generators. As an emotional generator myself, and part of how I approach all of this, I think it was just file under you can't write that shit. But and as part of this lecture, I want to invite you all to be sort of honorary emotional generators for this next couple hours. So that's now. Where are we going? I guess is the big question, right? The question on everybody's mind. So I'm going to share this. I got about 5 parts to this. I may skip some sections for time. Some of the things Luis has already covered. Obviously, I have a different perspective on it. I'm a different being, different past, different approach. So maybe there's some things that we will share that are repetitive, but maybe you see it a little differently. I have outer vision versus your inner vision, right? So I've made a living making graphics and making television. So visual presentations are really important to me. I will note, I'm going to make this entire thing available as a PDF for everyone. So Mari, my partner, is back here. If you want a copy of this as a slideshow, see her and give her your email so you don't have to take pictures of it. You can just kind of relax, enjoy it, and know that you will be given access to this as a resource. So this is about 3 years in the making. It is not finished. It may never be finished, but it's where it is right now. And if I had presented this 3 years ago, it'd be entirely different. And so I've added some new things to it. And so we're just going to walk through this idea of breaking the covenant. So what does that mean? So here's my premise, right? The world is not ending. Contrary to popular opinion, we look around and we're like, you sure, Daljeet, right? But what is ending is the agreement that has held it together. Something is ending, right? We get this sense we are closing a door, but every door that closes opens another door, right? But for the last 400 years, we've been bound by a covenant. And that covenant is what is dissolving. So that's what we're getting, an opportunity to break this covenant. And this involves a pretty major shift, because not only are we shifting from the gate 37 to gate 55, not only are we changing crosses, the locks, the keys, the godheads are changing with it. And this is another one of these really interesting parts of the mechanics of the Rafe mandala. And we're going to get into this. This is just sort of a preview, but hopefully we'll pay this off in the end and we'll really get to understand what this shift means. But just to, sense of going from Mitra to Kali, which is where the 25th lock is, which is I would call it the master lock in this system, and we're going to see how that plays out. We are actually shifting godheads with this move too. So on top of everything else, the mutation, the Pluto interregnum coming, all aligning, and we're getting this shift. No fucking wonder shit's getting batshit crazy, right? And I also want to think about this in terms of like an orb. When we talk about transits, a long Pluto transit can have an orb of 6 or 8 months on either side of that exact transit. And we're talking about a 400-year process, probably a decade on either side, right? So this vibration has been sort of vibrating at the edges. In the last 5 years, I think everyone's going, okay, shit's here, right? But it's a vibe shift, and a profound vibe shift, because we're now going to, like, the mood is the new way. It's not the covenant anymore. It's not the bargain. It's the mood. Shit's going to get really moody, right? The vibe. And so I want to look at this in terms of a new vibe. And of course, we're going to look at some of the chemistry of these godheads. We're going to look at some of the chemistry of these gates. And many of you may know, but the chemistry is determined by that middle coupling of every hexagram that are highlighted in red here. So you see we've got younger yin, which is Mitras, and we've got elder yang over there, which is Kali. And that's an interesting thing. We're going to talk about how the background frequency is changing, but the very chemistry is changing, through this system. And that's something we have no control over, right? That's where you just sort of surrender to your vehicle. But the other part of the program is very mental. So there's a part of this that is programming our personality. A part of it is programming our design. And we just want to align with this vibe, I think, is the best way to survive, if you will. So, as I said, I'm an astrologer, so I track cycles. I track ages. I'm obsessed with the precession of the equinoxes. Like, are we in Aquarius? Are we in Pisces? I've been trying to answer that question for 20 years. But when it comes to human design, it's all about the mechanics. And that's the beauty that this offers. There's something really practical, logical that we can sort of use to decode this stuff. So, and my conclusion as it stands right now is that we may not be the future, but we are certainly the bridge. And so I think every one of us in this room right now has a profound awareness and probably a sense that we are bridges to something. We are witnessing a transition. We're all here for a purpose. We all have a purpose, all have a role to play in this, right? We're all drops in the cosmic ocean, a fractal of the Godhead, right? And so that's just a great orientation to take. And so what I'm inviting is this sort of a ritual of release, right? We're releasing from this tribal bond, and not to rebel against it, right? But to release through a mechanical awareness, right? How do we approach this change? How do we move and navigate through this Maya and this shifting background frequency? So it's more of a technical initiation into the very architecture of mutation itself. I mean, it's pretty profound to have that gift, right? That insight that only 4% of people probably even could speak this language that we speak. So It's a great gift to have this insight, I believe. So that's kind of my premise. Now I want to just add my personal prelude, just so you know a little bit more about me and my background. And of course, you have to share your body graph. So everyone just sit back and you go, okay, get to know Daljeet. Everyone's going to see something different in there, I'm sure. You're going to see some of your gates. You're going to see yourself. You're going to see the other. You might see something interesting. But when I contemplated my chart in terms of thinking about this presentation, and obviously highlighting 3740 twice in my chart. So process planning, 3-5 emotional manifesting generator. So process planning, pretty goddamn important to me. But what I bring to this presentation, I think my split's really interesting here, because I feel like the Daljeet that's sitting in front of you trying to give this presentation, that's my presenter, that's my authority, right? That's my emotional authority. That 2212 gives me the voice, it's my throat, so I can speak. But what do I want to share? I want to share with my tribe. I want that 3740 to have a voice. That ego, that emotional authority is there. So that's who's before you, right? But the guy who made this presentation is over here on the research side. That's my strategy, right? This is where I get my sacral authority as well, right? So you see I have 3 channels, 6 gates in the sacral, pretty active, right? And so, as Ra always said, if you have one of the format energies in your chart, that's probably going to run your show. And true to form, the 52-9, completely conscious in my design, allows me to sit for hours and hours and hours and concentrate and focus. It's been living, working as a television editor. I sat in a dark room for 10 hours with hundreds of hours of footage. And I said, and 6 weeks later, it's like, well, there's your show, right? That's my 52-9, and it's beautiful. Venus is in there, my Earth. I love that channel, right? Gives me the direction of a conscious 14-2. So I like, all right, I'm going to research this. I'm going to help. Maybe this is a way we can go. And then another community channel that I want to share it and preserve it and support. So I think it's just an interesting way to see my chart, and that's my split. And I feel like both, when I do work like this, it makes me a complete human, in a way. So anyone have any questions on that or comments? Or So what am I bringing to this? 3-5, martyr heretic. And when I came here, I thought I was going to be pretty heretical. And then I saw Matthew's talk. And then I heard about Jonah's book, Jonah's lecture, and I thought, well, fuck, I'm going to be about the most milquetoast heretic here. So kind of stole my thought. But it's just amazing, because some of the things you'll see in the slide, I have some of the same concerns that have been voiced. And so, but that's how I am, and when I came to design and, when I heard martyr heretic, I was like, of course, like it just resonated with me. So I test the system and I'm calling out the blind spots. This emotional authority, no truth in the now, clarity over time, probably the greatest gift human design has given me as an emotional being, to understand that part of myself. And so inviting you to share this emotional authority today, and cross the planning, right? I'm born into this very architecture that everyone's like going away. So I'm here to give its eulogy. So we are gathered here today to honor the dearly departed. But as I think Lisa so eloquently said, we're not going away, and we will probably be very, very valuable for many years to come. But in a way, it is a bit of a eulogy to the cross of planning. Right? It's been 400 years under this frequency. So what I'm sharing with you is not the truth. I don't say anything with a capital T truth, my truth, and my truth is my opinion, right? So I have the gate of opinions, so I can't help myself. But as I say here, it doesn't mean my opinion is arbitrary. I mean, I've been, emotionally digesting this as a pattern for years. And so this is what I do. I watch, I wait for clarity, I revise, I change. So this is a fluid, emotional kind of presentation, if you will. Probably one of my favorite phrases from Ra, the mechanics of the Maya, right? It's just such beautiful poetry. It's so paradoxical, right? It's like, what the fuck does that mean? the thing that doesn't exist has a mechanic and you can use it. I'm like, okay, brilliant, right? And I think that's so profound for us to be navigating as these, juxtaposed beings. We get to actually use this tool to navigate through this Maya as these nine-centered beings. And so maybe we're not getting the truth, capital T, right? But what we're getting is a pretty darn good map to what I call here the machinery of the simulation inside. I don't know if you follow, but like simulation theory is off the charts now. It's like it's always been around, but like it's just interesting to see these things in the culture. And I think human design is probably the best explanation of what we would call simulation theory out there. So that's what we want to use this. Now, I have 4 layers of discomfort with human design that I want to put on the table here. All right. And my first layer is Ra as a modern mystery cult leader. And I swear to God, I did this slide before I knew anything about what Jonah was doing. I built this over 6 months ago. So here we have this source, right? Guy who called himself a black magician, said, don't trust me, do your own thing. He has a voice. I heard a voice. This is what it told me. Is this guy brilliant? Probably. I mean, everyone in the room would probably say, guy's fucking genius, right? Is he crazy? Was he mad? I mean, he described his own encounter with the voice as his descent into madness, right? So we have to take him at his word on both sides of the spectrum here, right? And so, we have this singular transmission. And so a lot of times when you're inquiring about this stuff, as I have, the last answer is, well, that's what Ross said. And his answer was, well, that's what the voice told me. Right? And so you're left with that. As someone with 6 first lines, that's troublesome for me. I can't build a foundation on that if I bump into something as a 3rd line that I can't figure out. So it's just something that I have discomfort with. So that's part of my approach to this system. My second layer of discomfort is what I call the formalization, right? So we've got human design trademarked, right? And this is what happens, right? This great body of information now becomes an institution, right? We have levels, we have certifications, we have brands, right? We have metaphysics behind a paywall. And this is no criticism of Ra, what he had to do to survive, to feed his family, over the way he wanted to present this and bring it in the world, right? But it is what it is, right? That this is part of the structure of this system. And that I'm uncomfortable with. I don't like, metaphysics behind a paywall. But that's what we have, right? And so just have to acknowledge that a lot of people in this room have probably taken certified courses. I've never taken a single one, right? I'm a heretic. I stole all of it from other people who are like, hey, you want some of this? You want some of this, right? So, and that's not a criticism, right? It's just, I want you to know that that's my approach.
You're donating your presentation today back to the greater good.
Absolutely. So that leads to a 3rd layer. So now you've got an institution, now you've got a church, now you've got an orthodox religion, right? And we get doctrines, right? We get, there's a lot of people in our community who are like, if it didn't come out of Ra's mouth, it ain't human design, I ain't having it. Fuck off Sharon Curry Parker, fuck off Richard Rudd, like no evolution. This is, I often think we should get those Ra hats for those who are like orthodox human design. So we know, you're like, okay, yeah, I'm not going to. Maybe we'll do a hat and a Ra hat making for the Ramaka? The Ramaka, maybe? I don't know. Ra-Ras, yeah. So, and again, I'm not criticizing. It's just when I bump into that, it's uncomfortable for me, because I see this as an evolving system. Like all these pieces are important. But that does affect how I think it's perceived in the world. And I think that's something that, I'm just struggling with. Which leads to my 4th layer of discomfort is, what I call pop culture fragmentation, right? Now we're in the influencer era, it's everywhere, which is great, right? But I'm complicit in all of these layers too. This is a self-reflected criticism. Like I have a YouTube channel. I talk about how great the body graph is, how aesthetically beautiful it is. So I'm part of this ecosystem, but I think, and I've gotten this with astrology for 20 years, like there's so much bad astrology out there. It's just really bad. And it's not helpful, it's harmful, right? So these kind of tools in the wrong hands can be dangerous and can harm people. And so that's something that I'm trying to grapple with as I participate in this ecosystem. So a lot of noise, but I think a lot of clear signal too. And I always want to try to just focus and amplify the signal. Okay. So, all right, Daljeet, why the hell are you here? But I think despite all of those reservations, I keep coming back to it again and again and again, because there is something here, something deeply powerful underneath all this. This mechanic is important and it seems vital. And it feels like, to me, I call human design the astrology of the 21st century. I really believe that. I think it is an evolution of many of these systems. And so I think this is what I put into the symbolic logic for us as this transitional species. That's what we're here for. That's the price of admission. So the experiment. This is my experiment. This is how I'm experimenting. This is what I do with human design as a 3-5. I kick its tires, right? And with 6 first lines, right? And I really investigate. I go deep, deep, deep. So, that's the blessing and the curse. But hopefully you get the benefit of that work. So yeah, this mutation is in my body, right? I've been feeling this for a decade or more. Like I've just always sensed man, you look around, flew in through O'Hare, right? You've ever been in that airport? Massive it is. Like at any given time, there's 100 planes going around and trucks and baggage carriers. I'm just in awe of it. It's such awe. I think, man, what would it take to break the system? How fragile this is. How fragile. It's so fucking fragile. And I just have this, man, what happens if that breaks? Right. And that's kind of the message Ra gave. And he was, a bit of a doomsayer in some ways, but I think also gave a silver lining. But I feel this. So I sense into what's this shift. It's why it's so important to me and why I resonate with it, I'm pretty sure. Right. So breaking this bond that is now, dissolving. So it's in me. I feel like, they say as above, so below. I'm really feeling the so below. So or any other, I know someone else was a 3740. Any process planning people in here?
35.
All right. Does that feel true? Does that feel alive for you?
Fourth quarter for me.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So as an emotional being, there's no truth in the now. And so, I think this should be applied to this whole system, right? We're talking about a 400-year mutation process. We're talking about a 26,000-year cycle. We want to take our time with this, right? So none of this is going to happen right away. It's not like we're all going to wake up on February 14th, 2027, like, whoa, we're in a different world, right? It's already happening. This is all, right? But that is an inflection point. So we want to be aware of it. But, there's a lot of confusion out there, a lot of signal distortion. We're afraid. So we are, I believe, as bridge people, we're supposed to help people hold it together. We're going to go into a 6th line, right? We're all going to become role models. And we're all being called to that right now, I really believe. So that's kind of my orientation. I want us to treat this like a shared emotional wave. We're all kind of vibing through it together. We're not going to make any conclusions, right? We're not going to need to have a consensus. We all are going to have different ideas about what this means to us based on our own circuitry and our own design, right? But we're just a group of 9-centered beings trying to feel what might be becoming clear. And I think consensus, show of hands, is it becoming clear what we're... And so I think that's the frame for this. I don't want to dwell on this too much, but this planning is still going to be here. It's not going to disappear overnight. The phoenix is already spreading its wings, right? We're already seeing this trend. We're in it, right? And so just start to recognize it, but it's not going to be apparent next year. It'll be a decade or probably the rest of this century before we really know what this phoenix business is all about. But we're on the leading edge of it, right? We have that awareness. So, this presentation is not an answer, but an act of listening, deep listening, right? The Sphinx, right? Cross of the Sphinx, the gate of the listener, listening to these long periods of time. Just having that awareness. Our ancients had this. That thing was built. When we go back to that chart, it'd be interesting. I always thought it was in the age of Leo. I looked at the chart and it doesn't line up with Graham Hancock, but that's another tangent. But so that's just, not need to answer, but just kind of listen to this together. Right. So that's all my preliminaries out of the way. Any questions before I move on? Any concerns, any objections? Okay, so how do we frame this shift? My question as I approach this is this a New Age prophecy? Or is this the source code of evolving human consciousness? Right? So that's the framing here. And as I say here, that's not a binary, that's a polarity. Right? We're very familiar with polarities in human design and astrology, that the whole wheel is based on this concept of polarity. But this is a spectrum we may all be navigating. Some of us may be on one side or the other, right? And we're all deeply enmeshed in this system. So we probably are already leaning towards this as being the source code to something evolutionary. But I don't think we've all metabolized it together fully. And we will never, we're always, it's an ongoing process. It's a wave, right? And there's so much in the culture right now, right? Think about all the doom, we have a thing called doom scrolling. It's a real thing people do, right? Is this the apocalypse? We have this huge resurgence in Christianity. We have, are you on the 5D timeline? Or are you still on the 3D timeline? Like there's so many modalities. And I think human design's global cycles is stranger than all of those in a lot of ways, but probably more useful and more mechanically effective, right? So we're not using this to predict anything. What we're trying to do is map this background frequency and to identify an invisible architecture of collective behavior. That's what the global cycles is to me. You spoke more eloquently about neutrinos than I ever can. But that was another just sort of aha for me in Ra's teachings was, wow, this is consciousness, How many megatrillion are floating through this room right now? If that is the carrier of consciousness and we're getting these imprints, it's just hard to wrap your brain around. And it's humbling. It's so humbling to think I could even know what this program is doing, right? But something resonates, and we probably all have that feeling of, oh, this is what it is. This is it, right? So, this is happening every minute of every second. It's happening right now. We're all getting conditioned. We're conditioning each other. The neutrinos are pouring in, right? The covenant is still in its last thrones, right? But our design allows us to modulate that frequency. And I think that's the most beautiful thing, is the idea that it's a two-way street. It's not just imprinting us. Every one of those that hits us, if we're aligned, we're sending that out, and we're sending that frequency. Ra used to say when he was in his mid-50s, well, some of those neutrinos that hit me when I was born are at the far end of the universe. I'm 55 years old, so I'm like, wow, it's pretty profound, right? We all have our part, our role to play. I think that's one of the most beautiful parts of this system. So it is huge, but we can ground it in our personal experience, right? So why strategy and authority, why operating in our correct form is really important, because we are actually creating something in the universe. We are affecting the program, right? So, just an invitation here. I love these. There's a few phrases: hold things lightly and act as if, right? So we don't have to know if this is a prophecy or if this is real, but somewhere in the middle, I think there's an orientation. We don't have to be certain. We just experiment with it. And so let's think of this as a signal transition. Something's fading out, a new signal's coming online. And I would invite us to be more like systems people and less like prophets, more like pattern recognizers and less like story believers, right? And that's that polarity, prophecy or the source code of human evolution. I think we all probably know where we feel on that spectrum, right? And so it's okay to be there. All right, now we get into the actual mechanics of this. And this is something I love, breaking this down. As I said, astrology, I've been looking at these cycles for years. It's a great mystery. When did it happen? You ask Carl Jung, you'll say 1911. You ask Sarah Bindu, it's like, oh, it's already there. Some people will tell you 400 years away. And so we have these two clocks, essentially. We have that traditional clock that our ancestors have been, at least 2,000 years, probably longer. I would say it goes back probably 10,000 years that we've had this awareness of this cycle as a human, as a species. Think about how impactful the sky was to our ancestors. We never look at the sky. That was their TV. That was their internet, right? They fucking got it, right? They really did. We've disconnected from that in many ways. These kinds of things bring us back into that coherence, I think. So there's these two systems, and they're off by a couple hundred years. All things considered, a 25,000 year cycle is like, that's close and that's ballpark for me. So we're going to look at why these two systems exist. So here's the traditional view of it, right? And where are we, right? And it wants to say are we in the age of Pisces? Are we in Aquarius? Where is that spring equinox taking place? And it moves back, or is it 1 degree every 72 years? So it's like, it takes 2,200 years to go through one zodiac sign. So there's much speculation. We're definitely on the cusp, but where are we specifically, right? Then I came across this thing. Let you all know. What the fuck is that? Right? And it's like, oh yeah, this is where it all is. To the day. Well, to the year at least. I was like, okay, this is 3 years of just this is where it started though. Right? And so what this purports to say is, I've got this figured out. I mapped this to this. You put those together. It's not very pretty. But that's what this is doing. So I want to, and so I saw that. I was like, fuck, like we could get down to the year, right? And so I dove into this, and I put on my suspenders and hat and got out my chalkboard. I was like, well, how does this even add up? What's the math here, right? And I can skip through this if it feels too in the weeds, but if people want to see it, okay. So 1 degree every 72 years, right? That's what we know. I mean, Copernicus talked about that. Newton validated. Even modern science says, yeah, it seems pretty close, right? So then we map it onto the Rave mandala. All right, we got to use fractions because 64 doesn't break into 360 really well, right? So you get 5.625 degrees per gate. Okay, we can work with that. You get less than a degree per line, right? And so what we come up with is about 405 years per gate if we're using this math. Right? So every 67 and a half years, we would go backwards line by line by line. Great, I'm on board. Then I look at this document closer, and it doesn't say 405 years, it says 411 years per gate, right? Which is about 73 years per degree. Again, it's only off by 1 degree. It's, I think, margin of error, pretty interesting. So it didn't dissuade me, right? And so then it's like, well, this is 68 and a half years per line. Again, we're only off by a year. Margin of error, I'm like, I'm still good with it, right? But then I wanted to really know this year by year. And of course, we're always talking about 1961. First line, 1961, 1961. I'm like, but wait a minute, that's not, if you do just the basic math, it's not how it comes out. If I go using that 405 year measure, well, I'm just going to go through this and get this all on here. It's like 1957. I'm off by 4 years, but now inside of a 70-year cycle, I'm starting to feel like, is it 2027? Is it 2024? Is it 2030? Right?
What did Ross say about 1961?
He said that that's when we went into the first line, the current first line.
Okay.
So I'll show you that here. And, I don't know if any of you guys have ever seen this, the Mystery of Love, which is one of his, I think that was a gray course back in the early 90s. And another thing that just confused the shit out of me, because it looked like at that time he was saying that the Maya gates were on the vessel. Has anyone seen this? There's probably a lot of people in this room know a lot more about this than I do, but that kind of threw me a little bit. I actually put this down for a few months. I was like, wait a minute, right? And so I don't know, and maybe I'm misinterpreting it, but if you read this, but what I really got out of this was the only source I saw him put the actual dates, right? And so if we look at those and I put them up against what it should be, they're just different. And I was like, well, what's the pattern? 52.9. What's the pattern? What's the pattern? Okay, this is 69 years, and this is 71 years. Okay, 69. Oh, is this 71? Nope, 68. Right? Pattern 69, 65. So what is that pattern? And that drove me crazy for a while. And I contacted Marianne Winiger, who made that beautiful chart. And she was very gracious and emailed me back. She said, yeah, I just kind of copied down what it said. I was the stenographer. I got to, that's how I first met Jonah. I posted on Facebook. I'm like, anyone know how this works? And he dumped me everything he knew about it. And
See,
you know Jonah, right?
logic.
Love this guy,
Channel.
right? And that developed our rapport, right? I contacted Jovian. I said, hey, do you guys have any material? I'll buy it. I would pay for it. I want access to this. And they said, no, we don't know. We don't know. And then I came across a guy online named Jan Vandenberg. Everyone know Jan? He's a European guy,
yes, I do.
right?
I love him.
He's like the master librarian of human design. Like he's documented everything. He's an amazing guy. And he said, yeah, that 411 number, he said, you got to look at it's a magic square. I said, what magic square? He said, this magic square. So here's a magic square, which is obviously part of, this goes back to the Taoist tradition. The whole I Ching is based on magic squares. And every number in any column, any row, any diagonal adds up to 411 in this magic square. But what makes this square so magical? That number in the middle is 137, which is a very rare prime number. It is connected to the Planck constant. Am I right about that, physics major?
That sounds potentially right. It's been a while.
Apparently, this number comes up everywhere in the universe. Whenever you apply math and physics, 137 or 137th, it's a mystical number to hardcore mathematicians. Carl Jung was obsessed with it. Wolfgang Pauli was obsessed with it. These are the founders of our modern physics. So that was kind of enough for me. Like, it just got me over the hump of why? And that was the mystery. I can't know. Some things you just can't know. As hard as you want to. It's just, you have to take it on faith. And so part of what I have to do is I have to take this on faith, that what Ra got, he's faithfully transmitting this. He might not have fucking known, but that's what the voice said. So we take it on faith. So here we are, taking it on faith. So then when you go back to this, this graph, then what then jumped out at me was this 33 BC, the lock and the key being the same, right? You see this, right? 33 BC. And that really jumped out at me as a starting point. Like, from an astrology perspective, you're telling me that's when this lock and key were both united. That's why I point to that. Like, this is where we went from Aries to Pisces, right? And then 33 BC. It's like, he was born in 33, maybe 33 BC, right? What BC means what? Before Christ, right? He supposedly died at 33. Before, yeah, I know. Yes. But back then, right, when this graphic was made, that's what, the last 5 or 10 years we've changed that. I was raised in Catholic school, so it'll always be before Christ to me. The nuns beat that into me, but so that's not like that alone is a data point that I was very, very interested in. So that's when I really started digging into how does this thing work, right? And it is the symmetry and the elegance of it is so fucking beautiful, right? We have these two juxtaposed crosses from the G center, right? The love and the vessel and the Sphinx, and they line up perfectly with the 8 high holy days of the pagan wheel. Right? What we're looking at is solstices and equinoxes and those midpoints, and it's beautiful and it's elegant. And so all we do is we say, those are the locks. Those are always, always active in the program. The program, if you take it at this, it's all about love and direction. And I know Ra wasn't a big fan of the program, right? And as a 5-1 ego manifester, you might understand why that personality might, as a super tribal 3-5, emotional manifesting generator, I'm like, no, I feel the love. Like, it's all what part of that frequency you're tuning into. So I have some different opinions about what the program is. And I think that there's some beautiful architecture under here. But to me, that is the key is love and direction. Where are we going, right? And I really believe that, we are in a, erotic, eros is the chi. It is the prana. Like love, all you need is love. I think the Beatles got it right in 1963, right? So this is our system. This is the mechanic. This is this great wheel. And to me, it looks like this beautiful, boat wheel, right? If I don't have a yacht, but if and when I do, it will be named the Neutrino Ocean. But that's what this is. This is a giant cosmic wheel that's going one line, right, every 67 years. And it takes 26,000 years to crank that wheel. And it goes on and on. And if you want to roll it back, you can go back, back this thing up. But that's what this is at its heart, is this giant, beautiful cosmic wheel sailing through this neutrino ocean, this global consciousness programming. So what it is essentially an 8-pointed star. And so let's make it. So for me, like graphically, again, outer vision, I need to see it. And this is how I visualized it with this 8-point star. This is a slide I made in 2022 that I've changed my preference of fonts since then. But and then we get these keynotes for each of these 8 locks, right? We've got the way and the temple, the plan and the example. Those are the vessel. That's how we love. But how do we get there? How do we move? Well, the plan and the example, and the leader and the witness, the Sphinx gates. And those are always in play, right? And I think Ra talked about, vessel people, people of the vessel, people of the Sphinx. You're always holding some kind of frequency, And not that any carnation cross is better than another, right? But when it comes to this background frequency, it's something very profound. There's always someone on the planet holding that frequency as well. So essentially, that's what this is mapping for us. It's showing this beautiful evolution through time that is evolving every 411 years through different crosses. So the crosses and the keys change. But again, this is such a profound point for me. In the history of our civilization, we literally changed our calendar to line up with this, albeit 1,500 years later, we're like, yep, that was 0. Starting the clock's over, everyone changed. But there's something profound about this point, I think. Super nerdy, if you want to know when we went into the age of Pisces, it was October 13th, 231 Common Era at 4:44 a.m. in Cairo. Just kidding, but no, I'm not kidding. I actually used that chart to calculate a hypothetical moment that we may have gone into the age of Pisces, which would have been 231 years after 0 AD, right? Because it had to go through, like, we're in one of these, 25 is one of these gates that crosses 2 zodiac signs. So you got to go through the era a little bit to get to it. Anyway, I thought I'd just put that up there for fun. So this vessel of love, right? This was a 400-year period starting in 33 BC. And what did we get? Again, I went to Matthew's talk. Anyone else go to that talk? Yeah, it's pretty interesting. Yeah. And we talked about confirmation bias. I'm like, because I'm like, I've been doing the same thing, bro. And like, yeah, we looked at the same data points, which was really interesting. Like 3 or 4 of them, I looked at that. But so here's my confirmation bias for if you want to play along. So here we get the keys matching the locks perfectly. We've got the vessel and the Sphinx working for 400 years. The program is saying, let's lock in, right? What do we get during that 400-year period? Got this kind of weird Jewish cult going on in the Sea of Galilee. No one likes him. Everyone wants to kill him. It's the era of the Pax Romana. This is actually the height of the Roman Empire, right? They transferred from the Republic to the Empire. That 400-year period is the Roman Empire. And how we have inherited, that is the birth of Western civilization, along with Alexander the Great and the Greeks, which was the age of Aries right before. Think about that. War, conquest, right? Empire building. During the age of Aries, the Mars-ruled warrior. But you've got cats like Ptolemy, and like astrology becomes a real thing during this period. It is the birth of Western astrology as we know it, right? And then at the end of this era, you get Constantine, who says, guess what? This is now the official religion of Rome, right? 400 years to go from this weird cult to this is it, right? Perfectly bookends this era, right? And everything we've inherited as a culture was born, I believe, in this period. And it makes sense. If that's the lock and the key, this set the direction. Not just this cycle. You can start to think of this as cycles on cycles. This isn't just one cycle. This isn't just clanning. This isn't just Phoenix. The program, that wheel, that's big, right? But this is what's being laid down. These are the tracks. I also think it's fascinating to look at the body graph for each of these lock and key systems. So, what do you get here? Well, you get every gate, right, of the G center. So this is what the program's jamming on for that time. Love and direction, love and direction, love and direction. It's beautiful. But nothing lasts. Time ticks on. And that's what this is, this cosmic clock. Tick, tick, tock. Shifts, background. Right? 25 is not the way anymore. Now 36 is the way. Right? Now we're in Eden in the 4 ways, 2 different crosses. Right? Now the way is crisis. Now the temple is friction. Right? Every keynote changes. Right? The background frequency is changing. I mean, most will put 378 AD as the fall of Rome. So within a year, Rome falls. The Visigoths, they sack it and take over. You get Attila the Hun, a horde's coming from the east. The whole game moves to the Islamic world. We don't know much about this. Our Western history doesn't like to talk about it, but that became the real center of consciousness, I would argue, during this period. You get the Vikings and the Nordic invasion. So in a lot of ways, you could say Rome was torn in 4 directions, 4 ways in Eden. Completely different frequency, right? And I think it would be fascinating to just do deep dives into each. I don't have the time for it as much as I can pay attention. It would take a team of people, but it would be a fun project. And this is stuff that I wish, maybe it comes, maybe it's coming. So then what else you get? Well, you get a different body graph, right? So now, totally open G. Well, we got the love and direction. The program is moving on. The program is now focused on the ways through the human experiential way, this crisis. We're going to get friction. We're going to get conflict, this emotional center. Notice no definition, right? And I don't like to extrapolate or anthropomorphize these too much because I think it has its limit, but it's kind of a reflector. The program is reflecting, maybe you could say, is one way of looking at it. But I want to pay attention to that because that obviously keeps changing, right? So these 2 eras, no definition. But, tick, tick, tick. Time ticks on, and the way changes, and the locks shift now. And what we're seeing is we're moving away. We're definitely in Pisces. Can you see how the 25 is just the master lock, showing you where we are in that zodiac, where we are in this gate. So now we're into 22. New program. Openness is now the way. Realizing is the temple, right? Cross of rulership, cross of the unexpected. And you get Charles the Man, Charlemagne, first real king of Europe. This is a whole new period. Now we're moving back. There's a shift of, the Islamic world has sort of moved in. You get William the Conqueror, you get the Crusades, you get the Inquisition. It's not unexpected. But it's just a different frequency, and again, you could say, oh, Daljeet, you're cherry picking this data. And I am, but it's interesting how it aligns. And you get a different body graph, right? So now, that 22 is a different, now it's individual, right? And I think about what it takes to be a leader, to pull back a whole continent together, right? And so just, I don't want to dwell too long on this because I want to get to the end of the presentation, but I just think this is really interesting. But again, we tick on, the wheel keeps turning. And now we got 63, now we're in consciousness and laws, different keynotes, of course, and we could just kind of take all those in. What does it mean when the way is now doubt and the temple is confusion, right? That's an interesting time. And this is really this is the era right before ours. I think this is a really overlooked, I think it's overlooked by historians, but maybe some of us in our mystical way. But of course, what do you get? The Magna Carta. Like, this is the law of laws. This is the beginning of all of our law. And Matthew had put it in a different, he found a different data point and correlated it. I can't argue or disagree with it, but to me, this is pretty on the nose, right? You get Aquinas and a whole change in the church and a willingness to be more open to consciousness, really, not just the tribe, but like this individuality comes out of this. You get the Renaissance. You get Martin Luther says, fuck your laws. I got my own laws. Thank you very much, right? All of this happening in this period. What is this body graph? Now this gets interesting, right? Because now suddenly we have definition. We have these crosses making a channel. We get the 60 and the 3. We've got root pressure. We've got sacral energy, right? And I think it's interesting when I see this, I'm thinking, yes, 25 is always the master lock, right? It's always the key. It'll always set the tone for the era. But my intuition tells me when the program has this kind of a channel open, that's probably going to get amped up, right? Like you would expect. This is what it would be. So then you look at, well, what is going on here? Well, now the 3 is the plan, this ordering. So the plan becomes the direction, right? Now we're on the Sphinx cross there, and 60 is the witness of acceptance. Accept a new ordering. A new order is coming, right? And in many ways, this was the new order before our new order. Like everything that happened in the cross of planning began here in many ways, which I just think is fascinating. So, but nothing lasts, but it gets 411 years to sort, and remember, we're going backwards, right? 6, 5, 4, which is another just phenomenal part of this system that really boggles the mind. So that, at the start of every era, it's almost like there's this avatar moment, right? If you think of Jesus at year 33, it's like the 6 comes online and says, there are probably people who will carry that frequency so powerfully. And I haven't found it yet. I think it'd be a good research point. Like, who are the avatars of every age? Are there 6-line beings who come in and say consciousness? Like, this is the Renaissance. Like, there's just so much happening here. So it'd be great to have all their charts, but of course they're 7-centered beings. So we don't have a body graph for them. Would that drive anyone else crazy that there's no fucking body graph for a 7-centered being? Anyone bump on that one? Jesus Christ, I can fucking get an insect, but I can't get my ancestors. Anyway, speculation. So, so we've ticked into the new era. So we're here. Now we're on board, right? We're in the cross of planning that we talk about so much. New keynotes, friendship in the way, right? And you got the French and American Revolution. We get the steam engine. We get electricity. We get nuclear power. We get computers. Shit blows up. Shit goes crazy. We get new definition, right? Now this 3740. So not only is it defined, but it is the way, right? 37 is not only part of a defined channel, but it is opening that 25 lock and saying, this is the new way. The tribe. This is why I think the tribe, what we got, right? This 8 billion strong tribe is because this program is so strong here, giving us this, this pattern, this program. So that's where we are. Well, no, we're like, we're right here, right? But what we're all anticipating is it's going to shift. This is going away too. All things must pass. The program moves on. So we're going to get a new way. Sleeping Phoenix and penetration. The way will now be the spirit in the temple of sexuality. And we could look at all 8 of these wheels. And they're all, I think you have to, I'm going pretty quickly through this. I wish we could spend a week on this, honestly. But just to give you a flavor of what this mechanic is and how it works, how it operates, and to see it visually, I think is really helpful. And now we can speculate about what the next 400 years is going to be. But I used AI to generate some AI images because I don't fucking know. It probably will, right? Are we going to get transhumanism? Are we going to have machine hybrids? Are we going to occupy Mars? I don't think so. The raves and, conscious pentas and, what's coming? I mean, speculate, to sit in this room 411 years from now and go, I didn't see that coming. Interesting. Or did we? Or did we see that coming? Is this a mechanical process that we can observe and be aware of and bring awareness to? And so I think that's the question before us now. And of course, this gives us a pretty interesting body graph. First time we see in 2,000 years, we have a throat. The program has something to say, right? We've got a good part of initiation going on here with the 34, 57, and the 20, all activating as keys here. So we can all speculate about what that's going to mean. Obviously, anyone who has these gates, you're probably going to feel that you're already at, like you're being pulled towards this program. So you'll get to know what it's like to carry background frequency, like those planning folks have done. But that's where we're headed. And so this is kind of, the backbone of, and I'm going to, at the end, I want to touch back on these gates because I think that is a really interesting key to look at. But before I get to that, I want to add one other layer, which is the godheads. And when I first started doing this research, I didn't really have an awareness. I knew it existed, but I didn't connect it. And once I understood another mechanic that was happening, I was like, oh, fuck, of course, right? So, we're going from, when we make this move from the 37 to the 55, we're changing godheads, right? And so just talk a little bit about what the godheads are. Is everyone familiar with them, at least, as it knows? I'm sure everyone in this room knows them. But let's just review together, right? They're not gods, right? We're not saying, Christ is over here in duality and it's only Christ and, Parvati. Like, they are archetypes. They are, composites. They represent an archetypal energy or a frequency. And mechanically, according to Ra, these are personality crystal bundles, right? And to my understanding, if I could parse out what he said and maybe contradicted himself in some different lectures, but it's like we all come from our personality crystals are from one of these bundles. And these personalities that do not change over time, which it fucks my head up. I'm not sure how that works, but it's an interesting way to just start to think about this sphere of personality crystals literally encompassing the entire Earth, so that all the neutrinos are coming through this program, right? And I think of it as like if the neutrino program is the source code, like these are the 16 apps of Earth, right? Mitra has been Google for 400 years, right? Harmonia has been Facebook. Like this is the program we're getting. They're filters of the program itself, but they all have their agenda. And the program would use these in order to push evolution forward. So now we're getting this shift, this mood shift from Mitra to Kali is a really interesting one. And as I say, right, they don't change the code. They kind of just filter it. They kind of make sense of it. We can't read machine code, right? But we can read our app on our phone. So you think about the godheads as being that thing that makes sense of the code. Yeah, that metaphor has its limits, but it's useful, I think. So now we have to go back to our wheel and we've got to add this other layer into it. So that's, kind of what I started doing, right? And if we put ourselves back to where we are here, the 37-1, we're in the cross of planning, we're in Maya, 1615 to 2026, we've got this emotional ego, and we build the godheads, right? So Kali, Mitra, Michael, Janus, and there's 4 for each, of the quarters. So these are our quarter of initiation godheads. Maya, Lakshmi, Parvati, Mat, right? These are our civilization godheads. We get Thoth, we get Minerva, Christ, Harmonia, and then Minerva as our duality gods, and then Hades, Prometheus, Vishnu, and the Keeper, right? So at any given time, the program is operating through a set of these godheads, right? And here's I don't know how you illustrate a trillion neutrinos at once, but this is my pathetic effort at it. Imagine that's the neutrino field, right? And so they're filtering through the godheads. Now, it's always happening, but this is an interesting mechanic where we have the transits going on all the time, which are going counterclockwise through this. So imagine the sun is in gate 63 right now. We're in late winter and it's in Mitra. So Mitra is filtering the sun, the neutrinos from the sun coming through Mitra, right? And this is a way to understand transits. So over the solar year, the sun and every planet is going to go and get activated by these godheads. And it's just a really interesting layer to appreciate about the system, I think, to add this insight into not just the gates, not just the zodiac signs, but the godheads themselves. So in a solar year, it would go all the way around, right? But what we're getting here is the background frequency, right? It is going, it's a deeper layer of program, we could say, that the transits are, a different time frame. The sun is a solar year. If you think about Jupiter's 12-year cycle, Saturn's 30, Uranus is 84. They all have their own program through the planetary cycles, but this is the big one. And it sets the tone, I think, the underlying base tone for the program itself. So now we have to think about, well, what's interesting to me is that at any given time, the way the crosses work, with the consciousness program, only 8 are active at any given time, while the other 8 are dormant. Right? And so we've been in this, and again, of course, it's part of the beautiful symmetry of the Rave Mandala, the polarity, the duality, the yin and yang, right? The 1 and the 2, right? Or the 0 and the 1, if we will. So we've been under a certain sort of program of 8 of the godheads for the last, not just 400 years. Now we're talking, we're going back to right before we shifted into the 25, right? Where we got into, we left and went into Mitra back in, say 400 AD. And this has been the background frequency for this whole time. So you can almost think about just these 8, right, running the program. We can almost think about, well, just these 2 were probably like dominating the program. So what did Mitra want? What did harmony want? What was about the way of the covenant and the temple of harmony? It's very interesting, right? This would be and then wherever the key is, that Godhead is always going to be the key. It's almost like it's the, Ra was a very hierarchical thinker, and I think, didn't he say no end to hierarchies, right? And not that this is, but there is structure. And I think this probably, programs some sort of structure into the whole thing. So, but what does it mean now to shift from Mitra to Kali? That's a pretty good question. And that's the way. So the way is changing. Right? So let's look at what we might discern from a shift in godheads, not just gates, but godheads. So we've been under Mitra's program, right? What a Mitra means to bind. I love this, like a tool. It's a binding tool. Like we did a mantra, right? You have yantra, you have mudra. Those are two. Tra is just a tool. A Mitra is a tool that binds a contact to God. Maybe that's really what it is. This is, you make a covenant with God, you follow the rules, you go to heaven, right? And we've been under that program. We all probably have been programmed by that at some level. I got it pretty hard. I got it pretty hard. But what does it mean to shift that? Well, the way is no longer about the tribe, and it's no longer about the covenant. It's the beginning of initiation. I love this, right? From womb to tomb, the return of the witness. This is rebirth, regeneration, an entirely new identity, right? And truth of the matter is, this probably has nothing to do with us. This is not for us. That's the raves, right? We did this so that they could do that. Doesn't mean we don't get to navigate through this. We're going to stay around, right? It's a eulogy. It's not the end of the world. But it's just really interesting. And so many things align during this transition with the Pluto interregnum, with what's breaking down in the 55. If we take all of those things together, it's a lot. It's a lot to sort of hold. But I think this gives us a key to sort of how we can navigate through it. And I think that's useful. So if we take, that Godhead perspective and filter it now, again, another layer down, what are we moving from here? And you touched upon this a little bit, like the chemistry is changing, right? And another, just one of those, like, when you see that wheel line up and you're like, oh, fuck, of course there's something going on here, right? So elegant and so beautiful, but literally the chemistry is changing, right? We have been in proline, which is a chemistry of Mitra, I'm just a bundle of proline. I have 3 of the 4 Mitra gates. I'm just whatever, right? But it's just that it means, at its chemical level, it's all about structure. It's the amino acid that binds. It says, I want to bind back. I want a Mitra. I want to make a covenant at a chemical level, right? Histidine has an entirely different chemistry. It's actually super mutatable. It likes to switch, it likes to code switch, right? Very versatile. It's a catalytic. So when you look at that, you're like, okay, interesting, right? And we've all been hearing about histidine for 30 years now. How long is it, right? So it's like histidine. And when I think of things like the telepathy tapes and everything that's going on, I'm like, wow. But that's what's coming. And again, not our chemistry, really. Not that we don't have it, not that we don't carry it, we do, but it's mutating. Something's changing biologically, chemically at this level. And that's what this is pointing us to. So we move from the family to abundance, from tribal to individual, from friendship to spirit, from the first line of the mother-father to the 6th line of selfishness. And that's quite a shift. It's quite a shift. It's quite a break. So that's where we get to break the covenant. Right? So I feel like this is a great time to sneak out under the program. Because the program's changing. It's like, yeah, we got a new game. Thank you very much, Homo sapiens and Transitus. Good job. Now, here's what you're here to do. You're here to keep mutating, keep the wheel turning with abundance. So we get a total vibe shift here, right? So we're moving from this contract to calm, right? Every time I hear someone's vibe coding, I'm like, sure, right? It's a new vibe, right? So we're moving from an age of agreements to an age of moods. It's going to get moody. It's going to get emotional. It's going to get individual. Where all that bond is breaking, right?
Just getting some fish here.
Yes, go ahead. This is the last section, promise. So now, promise of the premise. How do we break this covenant? Do we want to break this covenant? Do we have a choice in breaking this covenant? That's up to us to decide, I think. But now we're going to shift godheads. And I don't know if anyone's ever looked at this, but to me, this set of 8 feel much more yang and sort of skyward. And, you think about Mitra or Janus, there's something more almost mundane and material about them. Whereas this set feels yin and undergrounds. I mean, literally we're getting Hades and we're getting Kali and we're getting Thoth. I don't know. I never heard Rod talk about that distinction, but I think it's an interesting, and it just would make sense, right? That this is a binary, and even the godheads would honor the program at this master level or higher level. But I think what this sleeping phoenix era gives us is, we can talk about the way and that shift, but my attention comes to these 3 godheads and these 3 gates, right? The 34, the 57, and the 20, because this is the program's jam right now, right? They want individuation, initiation, right? Initiating a new way, initiating a new species, perhaps. We're holding our polarity. Right? Is this the source code for evolution? Well, that would make sense, wouldn't it? So, but then how do we navigate as Homo sapiens and Transitus, these 9-centered cats that we are? Well, I think we'd have to look deeper at these 3 godheads. And I think there's something really interesting when you look at them. And the first time we've had 3 godheads, 3 gates, and going back a good ways before we have this kind of activation. So maybe just taking a closer look at each one of these, right? And I think there's a keynote for each one. And the things I love about human design, I love keynoting. As an astrologer, that's all I fucking do. I just keynote for each individual chart, right? And I think keynoting is great. I think it's a beautiful gift. And I think we should all be using our own keynotes. And I've extracted what some of this Ra said, some of this is my spin on it. But if I'm taking one thing from the Christ Godhead, it is love thy neighbor, right? We are going to have to learn to get along. if this whole thing is changing and shifting, right? And I think Ryan said that the peace as a precondition for intelligence, right? Intelligent competition, success, and peace. If we can't get along, we can't evolve, we can't grow, we're kind of fucked. So love thy neighbor is probably a good mantra to carry forward into the cross of the sleeping phoenix. Of course, 57 is a fear gate. It's the fear of the unknown, the fear of tomorrow. We're all just fucking afraid. Like, what the hell? What is tomorrow going to bring, right? So it makes sense that if you're activated by fear, know what that is. That's chemically coming through us, right? This gate of intuitive insight, this foundational awareness of integration. And I'm not going to get into the amino acids, but you'll see I've given a little nod to Richard Rudd there with some of his, I think some of his mappings with the codons and the amino acids is quite interesting and worth exploring if you haven't, but just sort of a nod there. Then you get the nature is now, so that was the example, right? Christ is the example. Christ consciousness is the example. Why are so many people going back to Christianity? You know, I've heard this phrase, like someone said, like we've been pre-Christian for 2,000 years. That the true age of Christianity hasn't even happened yet. We're in a pre-Christian era. True Christianity is Christ consciousness.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. Love thy neighbor. We could do a lot more of that. Peace in the Middle East, bro. Anyway, what's the new nature? Well, we're going through Hades now, right?
Can we go back to Christ for a minute? I just
Sure.
want to say an interesting thing. My brain's going crazy over here with hectograph stuff. But when Christ was during that that cycle when Christ was born was the bottom trigram is thunder, and we're moving in now to this 2027 phase with 55. The top trigram is thunder. So I don't know. It's interesting. That's just an observation, observing a pattern.
Yeah.
No meaning.
Yeah. No, there is.
That
That's
there's like this re-emergence of Christianity when the top trigram is hitting, like when he came, that was the bottom trigram. So it's something really interesting.
Awesome. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's all in. This is the pattern. The program is being made sort of legible to us through the system. If you want to take that perspective, that's such a great insight, an intuitive insight, my friend. Yeah. So, okay, so now we've got gate 20 coming through this godhead. In Hades, we've got mutation. I always love, Ross said, Hades whispers to us, what's the point, right? Because after we've gone through initiation and civilization and duality, and we've made more humans, what do we do with the rest of our life? Well, we distract ourselves to death with wealth and diversion, fun and games. And this, gate of common sense, this line of common sense, which you're going to look at, knowing when enough is enough. And something to me is like, if I could get a keynote for this, is like this: what is true power and true wealth, right? We are living at a time when there are like 20 people on the planet who have more wealth than 7 billion. That's fucking whack. But that's a product of planning. Is that to be leveraged in some intelligent way where, this idea of philanthropy is immortality? Like, can we convince those cats, like, dude, you're going to live forever. We'll make statues to you. We'll give you, what do you want? Put that money to work, bro. Don't build your bunker in New Zealand. We could use that cash, man. So interesting way of thinking. And that's just my personal wacky spin on things. And then what's the new pattern, right? And so now we're in Maya and creativity. I said 20, now 34 is coming through Hades, but 20 now is coming through Maya, the creative, the nurture, the direction. And if I get one keynote from this, it's teach your children well, right? What did Ra always say? It's not about us. This is for the kids. This is for the next generation, right? And this is, Maya is the great godhead of the teacher, the mother. This is pure yin, right? Who teaches the children? Mothers. Right? So if we can, I think part of this is all of our shifting in hierarchy and the patriarchy's cross of planning, and it had to be maybe it had to get us to this point, and we're all feeling that shift. Maybe this is part of it. This background frequency would be supporting this more matriarchally, yin aligned, teach your children well, take care of people. We can educate our kids. I mean, we're going through a period where our education system is about to be completely overhauled. And it's going to become individual. It's no longer tribal. We're not going to send them to be babysit for 8 hours because the parents have to work, right? And you're not going to teach to the smallest or slowest. You're going to have bespoke education for every kid, right? Or not, or not. But this is what maybe the program has in line for us. So those are 3 really cool ways of looking at this. And if we just look, and we're going to have 5 more minutes here, so and we can take a break after this, but think about these 3 hexagrams, these 3 gates, right? The gentle and the power of the great in contemplation, right? How do we integrate those 3? Intuitive insight, power, and the now. And of course, we have to look at the 6 lines of all these, right? This is going backwards. This is what's coming online. So we get these 3 interesting keynotes to me. Utilize your common sense, and that's your wisdom. Couldn't be any simpler, right? So I have a haiku of the sleeping phoenix. Use intuition, powered by your common sense, to find wisdom now. So that's my distillation of breaking the covenant, right? So just to conclude here, the program is real, but it's not sovereign. Right? It's in the chemistry, so our bodies can't, the design's going to do its thing, right? But it's programming the mind at the same time, right? And that's where it gets us. That's where we can get trapped in the mind. That's where we can get trapped in the program. That's where we can take it into our not self, right? But that sovereignty is through the form. And that's, what does it always come back to? Strategy and authority. I mean, it's crazy that it's that simple. It almost seems like it can't be that simple. But that's Ra hammered that again. It's just that simple. All right. So surrendering the form principle is the first step in our ritual release. Right? As individuals and as a collective. Right? Follow your strategy and authority. Get into your body. Get out of your fucking head. And that's how we do it. We surrender and we step away from the gods running our lives. We break the covenant, not as a rebellion, right? Thank you very much. You're not going anywhere. And you've got some other business to take care of. And so we'll go on with our humanness. Thank you very much. Right? So don't be a tool of the gods, who are themselves just tools of the program. We've always said that, right? The gods themselves are helpless. The godheads are helpless. They're just part of this, turtles all the way up, turtles all the way down. So that's what it means. This is what we are. Homo sapiens in transitus. Live with your awareness, not as a rebel or a believer, but as a witness to the code evolving. We are witnessing this great wheel turning, this program. We're part of it. But we're not the end. There is no end. That's what I got. Do we want to take a break before we get into Q&A? You want to roll it into it? I know that we've got some full bladders. Water in, water out.
Yeah.
Let's take a 5-10 minute break. And then, if you want to see Mari in the back, if you want to get a copy of this PDF, go see Mari. She's got a list.